is Jessica Webster.
And this is Sam Pogue of the Fitness Break Room podcast. Sit back, take a well-deserved break, and learn about the journey that helps shape the most successful fitness professionals in the industry today.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fitness Break Room podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pogue. We're sitting here in Austin, Texas with the illustrious and amazingly good-looking Dr. John Rusin. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely, Sam. Man, it's been a good weekend here in Austin, as always.
Yeah, man. So this is the second time I've had the luxury of being able to have John down here in Austin, coming down to deliver another awesome continuing education course on pain-free performance. And we keep running into each other over the years at different events, and so it only made sense that we finally became friends and started hanging out. And John's a guy that early in my career, unbeknownst to me, did not realize we were the same age. That I've been following for years, and then his wife was like, he's our age, right?" And I was like, "I had no idea." So that's always fun. But that's what happens when you're super smart, is people just never know, and that's why people assume I'm like 10.
I also have no hair, though, so people are like, is he older than we think he is?
Well, I mean, that's the given for strength coaches, right? You have to.
It's a requisite, yeah. It's something with the testosterone, but it's like all that brain power, the meathead brain power up there, I think.
Exactly. I mean, bald white dudes are strength coaches, right? So, I mean, I don't have a future in this industry. That's why I started a podcast. So, I think a lot of people know you for your work as a physical therapist and a performance coach, working with Olympic athletes, power lifters, general population, grandma Betties. But I think a lot of people will probably look at like, well, if I go to PT school and I start writing articles, I'm magically going to get the same reputation as you did. But we all know that that's definitely not the case.
Definitely.
You've moved how many times in your life?
I had 4 different locations. I actually moved to Southern California multiple times.
Oh, okay. So you're really good at moving.
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Well, tell us a little bit about how you got into physical therapy and why you even came into the fitness industry in the first place.
Well, that's a great question because I feel like I've never been in physical therapy, and I feel like I'm currently not in physical therapy because up until going to grad school, I've never been a consumer of physical therapy a day in my life. I never went there as an athlete, and honestly, I haven't been into a physical therapist since. And people are like, what the hell? Like, why the hell did you do 7.5 years of school to get this credential? And it all stemmed back to being a strength coach. So really, that was my upbringing, was always performance coaching, strength coaching, and I had some really good influences on from 15 years old on.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate enough to have parents that really knew what the fuck they were doing.
Yeah.
They were both PhDs. My dad was an athletic director at high school sector, but he also was a university professor. My mom was an administrator at Damon College, which I ended up going to for grad school. And she, again, was in the health and human services. So I like to think that I had these influences that I saw on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't like, hey, you got to do this, but it's like, holy shit, 5 days a week I went to the sporting events with my dad. When I was hanging out, after school, I went to the university with my mom and saw some, academic classes happening. So time after time, I had these influences, and I happened to be an athlete as well.
Mm-hmm.
So at 15 or so, freshman in high school, pretty good. Played baseball, basketball, football. Really pretty good in baseball, to the point where my dad's like, you know what? I think you need to start strength and conditioning. And he wasn't like, oh, we're going to find some bullshit personal trainer and start working. He's like, you know what? I know a guy over at University of Buffalo, which is about 10 minutes away from where I grew up. And he said, hey, let's see if you can go volunteer your time over there. And 15 years old, every Wednesday and every Friday for about 3 hours, I volunteered my time just to watch football, to watch baseball train. Just to watch.
Not touch anybody.
No. I'm 15 years old, man. I'm sitting there. I still don't have a lot of facial hair, but I didn't have any at that time. And I would sit in the corner and I would just watch these world-class Division I athletes train. And I'd watch the coaches, the way that they'd interact with these guys. And I was like, holy shit, this is the deal. 6 months later, the coach was like, hey, here's a dowel. Here's the broomstick. We're going to teach you how to move. And up until that point, I've never done any structured training before.
Oh.
And 3 to 4 months later, I had a barbell in my hand, and it grew very, very quickly from there. But fast forward a couple of years, I actually ended up coaching, and taking my first job at that university. Then fast forward a couple more years, ended up in grad school, still part of the University of Buffalo, and then taking my first real job, I like to say, out in Southern California, kind of doing a hybrid approach after I got out of the DPT. But it all really stemmed from always being in the weight room. It was a performance mindset that was ingrained in me like very, very early on. And this is a funny story. So I was working as a strength coach, and I thought it was the best thing in the world. I was like, when I was in undergraduate, I jumped from 3 schools in 3 years. So I was a Division I baseball player, went to St. Bonaventure University on a full scholarship. And I jumped ship the sophomore year because I was playing in the Florida Collegiate Baseball League. And I was like, holy shit, St. Bonaventure kind of sucks. You know what? I'm going to go to this top 25 school. I'm going to transfer to University of Rhode Island. No transfer policy at the time. So I played sophomore year. I had chronic wear and tear of the body always. Like I was always hurt. I always had these weird injuries. I had hamstring tears. I had shin splints. I currently have no UCL in either elbow because senior year of high school, right one goes. Sophomore year of college, left one goes, and then the right one goes later on.
How did your left one go? Like, what were you doing with your left arm that caused that?
So this is actually the last baseball game that I played. It was a really shitty field at University of Rhode Island, and it was about 25 degrees out. We're playing spring ball, and it was like the 15th, 16th game of the season, playing center field, went to dive for a ball, just a blooper going in, got my arm caught under me on a shitty field, and ended up snapping it back like that. And literally to the point where I think I have some sort of genetic or biomechanical disadvantage at the UCLs because my one went years before.
Right.
But that was the last game I ever played.
Oh.
And I went and I transferred from there and went back to University of Buffalo. And again, started volunteering in the weight room, did my rehab with the strength coach, which was really, really interesting. And I redshirted that year, fully planning to continue on and playing my last 2 years. But it got to the point where I was rehabbing, everything was going really well. Academics kind of took the front seat, always been pretty good in academics. And
Of course you were.
My counselor brings me in and she's like, John, after the end of the spring semester, she's like, are you going to go back and play baseball? Like, what are your plans? I'm like, yeah, I think so. She's like, well, you have enough credits to graduate. I'm like, excuse me? I've been at 3 schools in 3 years.
Right.
And I actually graduated in 3 years from undergrad.
What?
In exercise science.
How many classes did you take at one time?
So I was taking a lot of AP classes in high school, and I was always taking fall, spring, and summer classes. So when I was playing baseball in the summers, I was always taking anywhere from 8 to 12 credits as well, just to always keep on moving forward. And I accrued a shit ton of credits. Like I was a couple credits away from a double major in 3 years. So at that point, I was like,
with transferring.
Yeah, with transferring twice.
And playing a sport.
And playing a sport. So that's like my claim to fame because the 4th year ended up going to graduate school, and it was 4 schools in 4 years. And I don't think anyone's ever done that while playing a Division I sport before. It's like almost embarrassing to say, though. It's like, I should be proud of that, but that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah.
It's crazy, crazy journey that brought me to there.
Well, and how interesting is it, like, from a social standpoint? Like, I only went to one school. I was there for 4 years. I was really good at socializing in college. I don't know if any of you can probably imagine that, but really good at socializing, which has led me down this journey to be really good at networking, as we might call it.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, in itself, like, that's tough because that's very developmental time for us as humans.
For sure.
And you're going through all these changes, learning about our body, going through injuries is really shitty on our emotive state.
Yep.
And so, was it school? You just bury your head in schoolwork and get it done, or like
the one thing that helped was when you're part of a team, you always have like the inside group of people that you're training with, you're playing with, you're living with. So you have like this group of at the time it was like 30 people. Mm-hmm. So I always had that. But the thing that really helped me was transferring back home to University of Buffalo and being able to just get some normalcy back. I had some friends in the area still. I had the support of my family still. I went and lived at home that 3rd year, and that was one of the best things that I ever did because I was able to really concentrate on things that would be moving me forward, which were academics at that time, getting healthy, and then continuing on my real-world education in that weight room.
Do you think that you would have gone the exercise science route had your dad not put you in the weight room freshman year of high school?
Yeah, so I was always going to go some sort of science route. So out of high school, I don't know if they do this anymore, but it's called a 4+4 pre-program. So I actually got into, it was an osteopathic school out of high school. So basically, you need to keep a 3.75 GPA throughout the 4 years of your undergrad, and then you have early admittance into osteopathic medicine school. So that was
That's OD? Is that
DO.
DO?
Yeah, so it's on par with MD. So
Right.
it's a physician.
Right.
So I actually got into that out of high school because I had very good grades, very good ACT, SAT scores. So I always knew I was going to go that route. But I kind of like I hit a little bit of a turnpike when I was at University of Buffalo because we had to go through exercise science in order to go through and get like the pre-med requisites. So I was going through all these exercise science courses because like, shit, I need the credits anyways. I was like, man, this is the deal because I was going to school learning about it. And what nobody does is actually applies it later on and
Right.
volunteering your time and getting some reps in with the coaches and with the athletes. So I was able to do both things simultaneously. I really think that's where most kids miss out is like they have all the theoretical knowledge in the world because they've been
Yeah.
hitting those books, they hit the library, and they never hit the gym themselves, and they never actually train or communicate with athletes or clients. So then they get out of the workforce and they're like, what the fuck just happened? Like they have no applicability to what they're actually learning.
Right.
But as soon as I got into that third year at University of Buffalo, I knew that was going to be my route. And I kind of just went for it. But physical therapy was never in the cards.
Yeah.
Like it was never even in my mind. I remember somebody asking at University of Buffalo being like, hey, like we have a physical therapy program. Would you be interested in that? No. Like everyone else. I want to train athletes.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing, like, you have a lot of kids that come through that are like, they want that track. Like, I want to work with the professional athletes of
Yeah.
the world. And it's cool, don't get me wrong. Like, I love working with them, and it's a fun thing to be able to say you do. But it's, like, that's a long road to even get there.
Yeah.
And even then, like, you might be really great at calculus, yet you can't build me a birdhouse. Right? And then you
Very
mentioned it this weekend. You're like, hey, the science is great. N equals 1, P equals 1, whatever you're trying to explain. Like, those are all great things to be able to talk about it in science. However, when you're going through your master's, undergrad, PhD, you're really reiterating or reproving a lot of the same things that have already
Yes.
been proving, right? Unless
It's
you're
more about getting the skills of actually having scientific theory in action.
yeah,
So it's not necessarily what you're studying, it's the process of studying it and actually getting the study out. But that's something that we know all the science. We know more science than ever before, but still our results aren't that much better than they were 30 years ago.
right. And even then, like, there's not a huge application of clinicians or researchers or scientists that also can step inside the weight room.
Absolutely.
You know, outside of, I mean, and granted, this is naive because these are just people I know or have had on the show, but you, Mike T. Nelson,
Yeah.
Andy Galpin, right? People who are like, oh, I can actually still go lift some weights and move, and I can digest it. And like, because your athlete doesn't care about your muscle biopsy and of what kind of tissue this is and under what kind of stress you did. It's like either I got better on the field or I didn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so you need to deliver that message of what they're doing in a way that they understand it, but like
Sure.
you're getting what you want. So I think that's really big, and you know, it's great to reference the research, and the research is awesome. However, you know, application is super important. Sometimes, you know, there just hasn't been a research paper on a guy that's 6'5", 200 pounds that has this specific history.
Yeah.
That got this result, right?
It's interesting. So when I graduated undergrad and I continued to coach. So I was at the university and then I took a job in high school. So I was coaching high school weight room as well. And I thought it was the best thing in the world. And at the time, like I was so happy with everything. And my GPA in undergrad was not to the level that could get me into doctorate level program. So at the time, you needed a 4.0, no questions asked, meaning that you had to have A's in every single course for 4 years. And I
You
was
got
at,
1 A-, didn't you?
I was like a 3.7, 3.8. So I mean, very, very good
Very
student,
close.
but I wasn't to the level of some of these applications. And my mom said one day, she's just like, you know, you're very smart. Like maybe you should go chase some academic stuff. And I was like, nah, I'm cool doing what
Yeah.
I'm doing. And then I got to thinking about it. I was Googling people at the time. And I saw some strength coaches in the NBA. They're like, holy shit, they got this thing called DPT. That's pretty cool. Then I was looking out, there's some strength coaches in Southern California that also had DPTs. And I was like, wow, you know, maybe there's an option here. So I was like, you know what, Mom? I'll suck it up. I'll go to graduate school. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And like an idiot, I continued to work close to full time and then tried to do 20 credits a semester that first fall semester in DPT school. The only reason I got in, which was really interesting, is that I was a Division I athlete.
Mm.
So they're looking at the applications. They're like, John, like I'm a stupid fuck. John, this 378, like, what the fuck happened? Like, what were you doing? Like, were you partying too much? Like, what happened? And then they're like, holy shit, man. Like, you played Division I sports? You played Division I sports? This is amazing. And so that was like the one thing that was like, not only did I play, I've actually been coaching too. And they're like, that's interesting. So that was my differentiating factor to even apply and get into grad school. But first semester, I am working close to full-time in the weight room and then going to school full-time, double full-time. And I remember my first anatomy, my gross anatomy test, I got like a 42% on it because I was just burning both ends of the candle, man. And I remember being like, holy fuck, I thought I was smarter than I actually am. I better start studying. So I took it down to like 10 hours a week of coaching. And then I continued to spend more time in the library, more time studying on the academic side of things. But I never stopped coaching. Mm-hmm. Like most people would have been like, holy fuck, 42%? Like clients, see ya. Athletes, see ya. Part-time jobs, see ya. But I kept in just enough where I could stay fresh with it and continue to use some of the methods that we're learning in school. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made. Because 3.5 years later, I had 3.5 years more of coaching under my belt. Mm-hmm. And I was at the position where I could actually have some ground to stand on when I tried to go out and get a residency or go out and take a first job. But I feel like many people go into school or they go into graduate school or even chasing PhDs, things like that, and they forget about the real world application, which is actually communicating with human beings, looking at human movement, and being able to be a real-time problem solver. That's shit that you can't teach. Right. You just need experience to be able to do so. But going through that was the biggest change. Second biggest thing that I did was I continued to train myself. So everyone was fucking around at lunch in graduate school. I was actually spending 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes every single day training. And you always say, like, you are your first client. Mm-hmm. So everything that you're learning, you can't just go out and throw it into your clientele, or you can't just think that a textbook is in 10 years going to help you with some client. You actually need to be testing this shit out on your own. Mm-hmm. And that was a transition that I made from academics to using it on myself and then back in using it on 10 hours a week of clients. That was something that helps immensely.
And no other kids were doing that. Like it's amazing.
Nobody. I had one lifting partner, and he actually didn't go to the school. He would come in and meet me at the school at 12 o'clock every single day for lunch.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable.
And that, like, people, and there's nothing wrong with this. Like, I didn't play professional sports. I didn't play Division I sports, and that doesn't mean I can't have the aptitude to work with athletes. But at the same time, you have a lot of kids individuals that come through that want to work with athletes, and they come into PT school with that mindset. Yet they aren't doing anything. Right, they're not working and they're not experiencing any of that level. And so when you're working with Joey B on the basketball team, he's like, hey, that really hurts my elbow when we do that move, and that's going to hurt my shooting later. Like, you can't think on the fly because, like, oh, well, I only knew one thing for elbow flexion and extension, so I don't have a repertoire of movements. I only know, like, okay, well, here's the movement pattern, and here's what's actually being stressed, and they can cite all the fascial layer, and they can talk about whatever level, right? And I'm like, I can't do that, right? But, like, I've been in the industry enough years to, like,
results are king. People don't care the mechanism of how they get the results. They don't care how smart you are. They know the efficiency of getting the result. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And if you can get longevity with your results, even better.
Yeah. So then, okay, so let's go in. You're in PT school, and you're working out, and you've now shifted from being a Division I baseball player, and, like, you're looking at your lifting and whatnot as a result to make you better on the baseball field.
Yep.
Had a couple injuries, which obviously stopped you from playing.
Right.
And then you're probably going, okay, there's got to be something more. There's more to this. There's more out there.
Right.
What? And then now you talk a lot about functional hypertrophy training.
Right.
Right. Longevity. How did you find this lens? Was that lens developed from this point in time when you're working
out? This lens was developed when I was in that redshirt year, when I was working with the strength and conditioning staff to try to get healthy enough to go back and play. It was essentially a type of blueprint that we're currently running and teaching today.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily know it at the time, but it was a really well-rounded approach to human performance and cleaning up weak links. So if you don't have UCLs in your elbow, your shoulders better be extremely strong and extremely stable. So I learned that early on. I always had chronic back, chronic hamstring injuries. Your ass better be big and your hamstrings better be powerful. So we started to do more of that. And you think about like the things that I talked about this weekend, it's like, that lines up very, very
Yeah.
well with those kind of methods. And then over time, I kind of transitioned in grad school as I continued to train myself into more of this FHT model. Like we didn't have FHT back then, but it was more of this like preventative longevity based model where we lifted heavy, we lifted for muscle building, and you always wanted to keep your body composition on point. But just because of my athletic performance background, we always wanted to prepare like a performance athlete. We wanted to be able to move, skip, jump, throw, really have physical autonomy with whatever kind of training that got thrown at you. So we warmed up and we did conditioning like athletes still, even though we were kind of hitting the iron a little bit harder. And transitioning through that time, that system got fine-tuned. I wasn't thinking about like, hey, I'm going to sell this program 10 years later, but
Right.
that system got bulletproofed because I was doing it myself. And then if something worked, we were using it again with our athletes. So that took me all the way through grad school where truly we didn't miss a day. I didn't miss a coaching day. And we got a really good experience coaching, high school kids and then coaching the college kids as well. But I remember almost being looked down upon because like in grad school, I had pretty good grades, but they weren't like the 4.0s again.
Right.
And there was the students that were like, hey, John, if you studied a little bit more instead of being a meathead and fucking lifting at lunchtime, you could probably have a 4.0 too. It's like, okay. And then when it came to applications for internships, applications to actually get jobs, guess what? Nobody cared between a 4.0 and a 3.7.
Right.
What they cared was, holy shit, you've been coaching now for 6 years and you're only 23 years old and you have a doctorate?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So that spoke volumes for people, even to the point where people are almost intimidated by it. They're like, oh, like, why are you trying to work here?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, like I just want to keep on moving forward. But it had so much experience plus the knowledge base and those things paired together. That was the one thing that provided opportunities.
Interesting. So what was it? Was there something that the University of Buffalo strength coach said to you or something that you did or a movement that you did that really like going, oh.
So it was more so the communication that I had with this coach. So this isn't practical by any means, but my training sessions used to be about 2.5 to 3 hours.
Okay.
Not because I was doing crazy volume, not because I was sitting around, dicking around on my phone between sets, but after we do a set, he would talk to me about why we were doing it. What's your focus on this set? What is this going to achieve and how does it fit into the general blueprint that we have for this training phase? So there was a lot of back and forth because I was very eager to learn. So out of the goodness of this dude's heart, he gave me an opportunity to learn while I trained. And when you think about being a personal trainer or a strength coach, we're trying to be teachers to our clients and our athletes. If we're just giving them workouts, they never get to improve their physical autonomy, meaning that they can develop a skill set that they can continue and do forever. So that was the one thing that, these sessions were long sessions. I think I was like eating meals between them.
Right.
But they were the things that helped me the most. Even to this day, like we're still using some of these methods and fine tuning them because I had such a deep understanding at an early age. But it was the time that was spent that wasn't paid for.
Yeah.
I didn't pay extra for that. I didn't pay any for that. I was at the university, man. And it was out of the goodness of a really good coach's heart that he saw something within me that I was hungry and wanting to do better, wanting to know and wanting to actually apply and giving me the real world knowledge.
Especially at such a young age. Like, let's be honest, 15-year-olds aren't exactly the most mature to like sit and talk to an adult.
Yeah.
But B to like,
at
I'm gonna learn.
15, I was just learning.
Yeah.
I was watching. At 16, 17, I was learning. At 18, I was training.
Oh, wow.
At 20, I was actually applying.
Yeah.
At 21, I was working. So, it's that transition. You can't just go all or none. It was like a multi-year transitional period there.
That's so, it speaks volume to your character, right? Continually a student and that you have this attitude because, a lot of individuals go to school and expect things like, oh, I got the internship at Cressy. I got the internship at On It. I got the internship with Dr. John or whoever it is. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, when are you going to hire me? And you're like, I'm not. Do you notice that it's just me and my wife here?
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of other staff here. So I hope you took some experience. And like my goal is to get back to the industry.
Right.
Right. And if I was in a spot that I could hire you, potentially for sure. Or maybe, you just didn't do a good enough job that I'm not going to make a spot for you.
Right.
That's also something, right? And it's, realistically, you're a small business, right? And it's just you and the business and teaching and educating and executing programs and working on athletes. But it's like, if you had an intern that walked through your door that just blew you away, it's like, all right, man, I don't have the budget to even hire someone right now, but I'm gonna find a way because you just blew me away with everything that you did, right? And that's what you were doing.
Yeah, and that's the model that like continued on even when I got, that first real job out in Southern California. I remember applying for 60 positions. And when I say applying, I cold emailed 60 dudes that I thought were studs. The kind of dudes that were like, they either had some sort of rehab background, but they were strength coaches, or their programming was just really, really smart. So I emailed 60 people. I remember I did it all in one day because I was like, you know what? I need to get out there. I need to at least get some opportunities, continue to move on. And out of those 60 people, I got 2 emails back.
Wow.
2. So I was like, fuck it. Who cares? Everyone's scared to take chances. Like, taking a chance on emails, easy.
Right.
I got 2 responses back. One ended up, not coming to fruition just because we lost communications on it. The last one, after multiple Skype calls, I actually got a chance to do an internship. So at the time,
no money.
Yeah,
not getting paid.
No money. I moved everything out to Southern California from Buffalo. I had no money at the time, like broke, absolutely broke.
Right.
And I moved into a Days Inn. So I was in San Diego. So I moved into a Days Inn, essentially in the ghetto on the highway. And it was the cheapest thing that I could possibly find. And at that Days Inn, I lived there for 3 months while I did this internship. And I went to this facility every day at 5 a.m. and I stayed until 9 p.m. every single day. Just because when I wasn't working, guess what? I was watching those coaches work.
Yeah.
Or the physical therapists and the chiropractors. Like, I was watching them work.
Yeah.
And after that, they're like, holy shit, this guy's here on a Sunday for 3 months. And they're, like you were saying, like, we got to hire this guy. So I end up getting a job, kind of dual role as more of a sports performance physical therapist and then a performance coach. And, about a month and a half in, I was working with general fitness clients. I had like a couple of the college athletes that were coming in, nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm.
A month and a half in, my boss essentially was out sick that day. And one of his big time athletes walks through the door, not knowing that the guy that he was supposed to be working with wasn't going to be there that day. And the girl at the front desk goes, oh yeah, Dr. So-and-so's not in today, but John's here and he doesn't have a client right now. And then the guy goes, well, who's John? Oh, he's a DPT, but he's been working as a strength coach and he's a Division I baseball player. Well, guess what? This guy was a baseball player. He was an all-star. And he goes, holy shit, you played D1 baseball? Hit him up.
Nice.
The rest was referrals after that. For the next year, I got all the referrals from this guy, and that just sparked everything out there. But it wasn't because I was the smartest. He didn't go, did John have a 4.0 or did he only have a 3.78? It was, hey, he's a strength coach? Holy shit, that's cool. Oh, he's a DPT too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Like, he's got some education. Then the definitive factor of him being like, fuck it, I'm going to put my body in this guy's hands today was, hey, he did what I do, which is play.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that you had to be an athlete, but you have to appreciate that people have athletic endeavors and at least step into their shoes a little bit. That's, again, making a human connection. But then, one opportunity presents, if you did horseshit with it, it wouldn't have come to fruition with anything.
Yeah.
But again, if you deliver, you get opportunities and it's your job to be prepared for them. So that was the one day I can remember. I was phone rolling my fucking IT band, just like laying around on the ground in the back of the gym. And I was like, holy shit, I'm working with this guy today.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it's like that relatability, right? It's the whole point when I even started the show is like, we could spend multiple hour-long podcasts talking about training philosophies and, in fact, we could probably spend 16 hours doing a whole...
I think we just did
a whole 16 hours on it, right? But it's like the relatability, like how many of you are probably going to school or PT school or wanting to be strength coaches, want to work with professional athletes or follow his work. And it's like, oh my gosh, I like him even more because like I was that person. Right. I didn't get to make it all the way through to get drafted to be the next Yankee star pitcher. And so, but I chose fitness as my next route. And like, I want to work with athletes or maybe the commonality of like, ooh, I was that kid that didn't have a 4.0 in my school and everybody bastardized me for it. And then now it's like, oh, but now you're super successful and you didn't have a 4.0
Right.
and like all those kids, like that doesn't actually matter. I was really far from a 4.0 in college. And I think I'm doing
It's
okay in
hurting
my
you
life.
now. It's hurting you
so
now.
hurting me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, yeah, having the best social network does not come in handy at all as a skill set for me. But I think that that's so powerful. And living at a goddamn Days Inn.
It was pretty cool. At the time, my dad drove out with me. My dad drove out with all my shit. And I remember him just like, he didn't say anything bad about it, but he was just like, holy shit. You know, like, you're going to live here. But he was one of those guys that would support me no matter what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. So he dropped me off in fucking Southern California. And he thought it was the coolest thing in the world that, like, you know, like, I grew up very, very well. My parents had great jobs. We had great networks, great town that I lived in.
Yeah.
And I went from that to like the ghetto. But he was like not thinking like, oh, this is shit. He was like, this is what this dude's got to do. You know, he's got to grind it out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to get experience. You know, he's got to suck it the fuck up.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the mentality that he always had, kind of pushing me into some of this stuff, or leading me into this stuff, I should have said. So I could see like he was almost proud that I could have been like, hey, I'm a DPT now. I can take a traveling physical therapy job for $100,000 a year.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, no, I'm going to go out for free. I'm going to live in a shithole, and I'm going to see if I can do good enough to just create opportunities. That's all it was.
That's it. I mean, like I said, you just finished PT school. Like you know, you had these accolades already. You could have probably gotten a university strength coach job somewhere pretty easily.
Yeah.
And you chose to go work for free, live in a Days Inn, right? Put the quarter in the bed and started, you know, they get my SMR in there. And
It was one of the days in that it had like a tiny little kitchen. So I used to cook all my own food there because, again, I was broke. I would go to Walmart, buy the fucking food. I'd cook all the food in the Days Inn. It was only like a sink, and then I bought one of those Foreman grill things.
Oh, nice. The George Foreman. Nice.
So I was like doing frozen meat and frozen fish and then frozen bag veggies. And I think I did that for 3.5 months.
I bet you were so shredded. I bet you were so
I was
lean.
so shredded at that time. I was like, holy shit, man.
Weird if you have no money and eat super clean because you don't have any other options and you just work out and stand in the San Diego sun. And thankfully, San Diego is very temperate, right?
No,
it's
it
like
is.
beautiful. And then, you know, and it's like, oh, what a great way. It's like, now I look the part. And it's like,
I remember going to like Starbucks and having like homeless dudes like that were buying better drinks than I was. Like, I remember dudes in La Jolla that were like getting like $5 caramel macchiatos, and I was like getting like iced coffees that cost like $1 just because I couldn't have anything else.
you're like, oh, let's see,
It's
carry
like,
the
what the
2.
fuck?
Yep, I've got
Yeah.
$1.10. Can I borrow 20 cents from your tip jar? I promise I'll pay you back.
Yeah.
So after San Diego, or how long did you spend in San Diego?
So I was there for 1.5 years at that position after I got the job. And like life kind of transitioned for me because my dad ended up getting terminally sick with cancer to the point where, you know, he had 3, 4, 5 months to live.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I'm an only child, so my mom wasn't dealing with it very well. And I ended up having this all-star cast of clientele. I had MLB, I had NFL, I had all these people at this job. It was my terminal job, and like I loved it there.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of suck it up for my family, and I ended up leaving that position indefinitely to go and help my mom. So my dad ended up passing away, and I honestly didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, man, like I just kind of quit a great job.
Yeah.
And it was very sudden to the point where like things happened very quickly. So I kind of like left some clients kind of out to dry. We transitioned them over to some people remotely, but it was one of those things. I had a 3 to 4 week period where I was like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do? And I sat in Buffalo. It was over New Year's. So my dad passed away like on January 6th. So this was all transpiring. Christmas, New Year's, all my friends were home. Everyone kind of knew what was happening. And in a matter of getting to February, the guy that I was working for at the time was like, John, man, like I understand. You know, I went through things with my father. Like, what do you need? What do you need from me? I was like,
wow.
man, if you could recommend me to, you know, a facility or, you know, one of the people that you know. He was running mentorships at the time. And in a matter of 12 hours from sending out emails, I had 4 or 5 offers to start my own thing.
Wow.
I ended up transitioning down, went to Houston, Texas, started my own kind of hybrid practice there. Partnered up with an old friend. We got that thing together. We got that thing popping. That's as monetarily successful as I've ever been. And I started seeing the potential of like, holy shit, you know, like not only can I do world-class things, but I can actually make money. because before I wasn't making any money. I was making like $19 an hour in Southern California, and that wasn't working out very well for me.
Still living in that days in.
So I started making money at the point where I'm like, hey, you can do good things, you can make money, and I saw a future in that. And I left the practice to my partner, and ended up always wanted to be back in Southern California. The only reason I left was because of extenuating circumstances, moving back to Southern California, trying to reproduce the same thing again, and spend another 2 years out there again in this hybrid performance practice, running performance and then doing therapy on top of that. And it was, again, pretty successful. But then, life hits again. I started dating my future wife, and everything changes. So I ended up doing a lot of more remote work, took some contracts overseas in professional sport, and then ended up moving to Madison, Wisconsin years later. So
Lindsay was in Boston at the time?
So Lindsay was in Boston, then moved to Madison. And then we were spending time between Madison and Southern California. And then I took a job in China, and it kind of didn't matter where I was at the time. So you know what? I was like, you know what? I'm going to move to Madison. And this is now almost 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then a kid later, and
oh yeah.
That changes. Two of them, 2 kids, right? And that changes things too, because you don't just have to be like, ooh, I get to go home and be strength coach, and I can read research, and I can write programs, and it's like, ooh, I have a couple kids jumping on me. I have to be a husband. You have to be your own person, right? You have to have your own hobbies. You got to have your own interests that beyond work. Even if you do love your job, you do need to have things that you enjoy outside of
absolutely
reading research articles and other.
I still do a lot of reading, but the one biggest change that moving to Madison gave me was kind of some perspective on kind of what I wanted to do. Because at the time, moving into Madison, I've trained the best athletes in the world.
Yeah.
We've gotten people gold medals in the Olympics, like done a lot of great professional things. Nobody knew who the fuck I was.
Right.
Like I was a random person that was working with athletes at the time. And the only reason that I ever wrote an article, the first article I ever wrote, was because Lindsay was bitching at me, and she's like,
Sorry,
why are you reading all this stuff all day? It seems like you're reading hours a day. I mean, you train NFL All-Pros, you train MLB Cy Young Award winners. Like, write something. She almost like yelled at me, like, write something.
Like, Lindsay,
like,
sassy?
No. But what do I know? Like, what do I know? What do I know that nobody else knows? That's what everyone thinks. Like, oh, we see these like huge stars in our industry, What do I know that they don't already know? And it got down to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm doing this soft tissue thing. I'm going to write an article about it. It took me like a month and a half to write this article. And at the time, I wasn't really working at all in Madison because I was between gigs. I didn't have a license to practice physical therapy in the state of Wisconsin. I was just kind of chilling. And wrote this article. I actually had one of my, the guy that edited my doctoral thesis, edit a T-Nation article before I sent it in. And I happened to get with TC over at T-Nation, and I found his email address somehow. This is 4.5 years ago now. And it's to the point where you can't just submit articles, right? You have to know somebody that knows somebody. You have to have like the back door in.
Mm-hmm.
So I get this guy's email, and I send it over, and he's like, we might be able to use it. Like, okay. So about like a month and a half later, they publish this thing, and it ends up going viral on First Hit. And they're like, this is the first time we've ever published anything from a physical therapist since 1998's inception of T-Nation. Let's get another article. And then another article. Then 4.5 years later, it's 215 articles in.
Wow.
So we did a lot of content.
It's an article a week.
It's an article a week. It's all injury prevention based, smart performance training based. And guess what? People gave a fuck.
Yeah.
People really cared because they didn't necessarily know it. I don't think the industry necessarily knows it, but everyone's kind of hurt. Everyone's just trying to feel a little bit better so they can do what they want to do, which is train hard, go heavy, and just be in shape. And that was a transition point for us where, again, consistency, little by little, writing the articles, shooting the videos, continuing to coach, treat, train, doing everything. And that's just continued on to today. I mean, we're kind of doing that same thing. We've transitioned a little bit here and there, but that was one of the biggest transitions that we made, was like, hey, I'm coaching people only. I'm going to write this one article. And again, it was just an opportunity that I was ready for. I didn't necessarily know I was ready. First article is always horseshit. Right. But, 4.5 years later of writing articles every week, shooting videos every week, doing seminars, doing educations, talking to people, you get really good at the practice. Again, it's the experience. So it's like everything comes to fruition 10 plus years later.
Right.
People, I don't think necessarily realize that.
But even then, people think that like, oh, I can just start writing articles and they're gonna be that big, right? Like
Right.
you still have to have a solid value proposition
Right.
to what kind of pain point you're solving for others.
I had this conversation with a couple of our attendees after the course yesterday, and his question was like, how do I get my name out there? How do I start getting traction with my content? And my question was to him, I'm like, what makes you different? What is your value proposition that nobody could ever reproduce?
Right.
So what's the one thing that makes you different that nobody else could ever copy? If you can find what that is in this industry that nobody could ever reproduce, you're going to be very, very successful. And if every single move that you make with your clients, with your content, with your video, with your own training is geared towards that tiny little niche, you're going to be very, very successful. The key is that people don't necessarily know what that niche is. They throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, but that's not how you go about things. You develop expertise, even if it's a tiny little niche. Like I said in the seminar, I think I'm one of the world's experts in the tiny little niche, which is pain-free performance training. But there's experts all over the place. You just have to be somewhere else. You can't be somebody else.
Right. Right. Well, and and this is it's gonna sound worse than what I'm trying to say, but it's like it is okay to get to the level like the John Russins, the Christian Thibodeaus, the Mark Fishers, like took a lot of time and work, right? I mean, essentially you've been at this since you were 15, right? And like I don't contribute to T Nation by any means, and I'm not writing articles on a regular basis. I feel like I've had some success in this industry, and I feel very blessed to be where I'm sitting today. But like I was okay with the fact that I followed your work and Joe D's work and Smitty's work, and like I just trained clients, right? And I trained Grandma Betty's and Susie Q's. To be honest, until I moved to Austin and started working on it, like I wasn't working with professional athletes on a regular basis, right? Nor was it like day to day, day in, day out.
Right.
It was like, oh, this person's in town for the day, I'm just going to work with them. So it's like, it's not like I'm putting them on the table to screen them. I'm just giving them an experience and just not fucking them up. Right. Whereas like now it's like, oh shit, I train someone 4 or 5 days a week and like I have to pay, a whole lot. So now it's like the culmination of like all these education, all these seminars I get to take. And like, okay, do I deliver it in a lens that they find valuable? Because I could have all this information and like they may not like me. Or that conversation that we went back to, like him and I have a conversation at the end of every session during this session. Hey, this is why I'm plugging these in. This is the adaptation that I'm hoping to accomplish. We did lateral bounds within medicine ball today. And he's like, man, I love that. I felt really good about it. I kind of wish we could go for like 30 seconds instead of like 10 seconds. I was like, oh, well, I totally understand that. And maybe next time we'll add it into the end of the workout for like an aerobic capacity setting. Because this time it was all purely like alactic system, right? Can you get the same amount of reps in for the given amount of time that I'm giving you and performing it under these circumstances? He's like, oh. Okay, I see why you did that now. This is what I'm trying to get out of it versus like, it's not hard for the sake of being hard. I'm trying to tap into a very specific response before we go do something else.
You made a good point though. I'm a big believer that you don't choose to be like great. You don't choose to be like somebody like this all-star person. The people that we all know their names, they don't make it about themselves.
Right.
They make it about their clients. They make it about their work. They're so fucking busy doing what they're doing at a world-class level that, success kind of goes on their back, but it's, again, not about them. Luca always says, you're not the fucking hero. Your clients are the hero. Your business isn't the fucking hero. Just because it makes money is not the hero. Your clients and the results that it can drive, that's the hero. We were talking about it earlier on today. It's there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in our industry. Everyone wants to be the next big thing. It's not about you. Right. You don't choose your opportunities. You prepare as well as you possibly can. If you get an opportunity, awesome. But you don't choose your path. Your path chooses you. If 10 years ago you said that I'd be sitting in Onnit Academy talking about glute activation, talking about not fucking up your shoulders on the bench press, I would have thought you were crazy.
Right.
I would have thought you're absolutely crazy because pain-free performance training wasn't something I was thinking about back then. It's something that kind of chose me. I saw an opportunity, and that's what I was doing, and I continue to get good in this tiny little niche. And again, opportunities choose you. But everyone's going to have a different driving factor. And the reason that we're in strength and conditioning, the reason that we're in personal training is because it's a service-based profession. We all get off on making other people feel good. And if you lose that somewhere down the line, you're not going to be successful.
That's it right there. If you guys don't take anything else away from this episode, that's the line right there, right? It's not about you, right? It's about them. And to get your name out there as a result, because they're the ones promoting, like, oh my gosh, John did so much for me. Like, I wouldn't be here without him, right? If any of you guys ever snowboarded, like a running joke, it's like you go snowboarding with other people, and it's your friends that tell people how good you are at snowboarding, right? It's not you telling people how good you are. And it's the same thing for your coaching. Like, like it's not like, I don't need you to repost me or like my photos or do anything, like, because it's not about that relationship. Like, I'm going to gauge the success off of our relationship by like, okay, well, people are talking about you being an older athlete and like you might be losing it. Like, man, I want to shove it up everybody's ass and be like, dude, he pitched till he was 45 and he was dealing, right?
Yeah.
And that people are like, oh, well, your arm speed's slowing down, your velocity's down. And it's like, nope, that was a choice because I wanted better longevity and I don't need to throw 105 miles an hour all the time. I can throw 92 and still be effective. Like, those are the fuck yous that I want to give. And so that way him and I can look back on this year together at the end of this season is like, wow, the work that we did together here and then what you put on the field, this is why you were able to do that, because you stayed healthy. You did that, right? But it was all about him.
Yeah.
I could give a shit if he like posts me about it, right? Because I know him and I have that relationship, and that's the dialogue that we've had. And now you have the opportunity where you don't just work with powerlifters or coaches or athletes. You work with the best athletes. You work with the best coaches, right? Dave Tate, right? Elite FTS, right? Sought you out. How many coaches has Dave had in his years?
And
Millions?
he's been rebuilt by many people, many notable people.
Yeah.
John Berardi, John Meadows.
People that you look up to, people that you respect.
Could work with anyone in the world and chose to seek me out. And unbelievable. I didn't go, hey, Dave, I have this good program that you should be able to do. It's like, no. Years later, I met Dave years ago. He reaches out because of reputation and us being very athlete-centric.
Yeah.
Not me-centric, athlete-centric. It's all about them. And I think that, there's a certain amount of respect there. And that's what drives things forward, drives opportunities.
Do you think that you would be in the private sector like you are now, delivering your own information, your own content, had you not written that first T-Nation article?
No, I would have been totally fine with nobody ever knowing my name. I didn't seek attention with that stuff. It was always about coaching my athletes. Like, I used to go home at the end of the day and think it was the best job in the world, just going in, grinding out a 12-hour day, having multiple amazing athletes come in, having an eclectic clientele too. I did a lot of general fitness, and I felt good at the end of the day because I knew we were doing something for people. But again, like, if Lindsay didn't have me write that one article, I don't know where I'd be. I'd probably be totally happy with my life. I'd be living a very similar life in terms of what I'm doing professionally, but nobody would know about it.
Right. Maybe
which
a
would be-
practice in Madison,
Right.
work on a few people here
Right,
and there,
right.
write some online content. I bet you would
Right.
have gotten in the online content game.
So I believe that our systems would be what they are. Nobody would know about them though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, for you, getting that article, obviously Lindsay pushing you to do that, but you weren't getting paid. Initially, you weren't getting paid by T-Nation, right, to write articles.
No,
Like,
I mean, you got paid per article, but it was nothing to be writing home about.
and it was a lot of time to write these articles,
Yeah.
right? Because it wasn't like it was like, oh, well, I'm going to blah, 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 blah. It was like, ooh, I got to put some work into this.
Yeah, I mean, that first one was probably 50, 60 man hours in, not only mine, but editors, things like that, even to get ready to be presentable. Yeah, crazy.
And was this just past experience, or were you doing new research? Like, what were these articles?
So the
early
first
in,
one
right?
was, it's a method that we don't necessarily use anymore. I don't teach in the seminars, but it was called hands-on self-myofascial release techniques. Essentially, I wanted to give athletes and give coaches the ability within their scopes of practices to start using manual therapy without touching their clients.
Yeah.
And teaching people to essentially manipulate their own tissues.
Mhm.
And after 2 years of actually teaching that, I actually taught that in a course 3 years ago for the first time. And we got through 3 protocols in an 8-hour day. And I was like, this is not going to fly.
Wow.
Because it was too hard to teach. But then we transitioned to be like, hey, man, like, we need to be going hands off. We need to be more self-sufficient with what we're teaching. And everything's a lesson. Like, I started with that one article. People are really interested in it. And there's 2 or 3 articles that came after that, but that's not something we currently do. It's not that I don't believe in it, but I think for the greater good of people's education, there's better things that they can be doing that's going to be more efficient, that they don't have to spend 20 years trying to study bioanatomy to actually get a result from.
Yeah, interesting. So now, I mean, now the primary content, as we talk about old content that you used to deliver, functional hypertrophy training. What does that mean? We hear the word functional all the time in fitness. Some people is like, oh, well, it's just overused, and hypertrophy is obviously we talked about this weekend. No one really knows what it is. I mean, inherently, some people do, or
Yeah.
hypertrophy, or what? How do they say it?
Hypertrophy.
Hypertrophy. There you go. I was like, how do I say it wrong again? Like, what is functional hypertrophy? I'm trying. Like,
Oh,
I'm not
man,
like,
you're
oh,
struggling with
I'm,
that.
I'm like hypertrophy training.
This goes to bad marketing because we aren't marketing people by any means. Hypertrophy, you can't even fucking say it.
Right.
Like, you think people know what it is?
Right.
Hell no. So essentially, it was me in my own way trying to give the kind of programs, generalist programs that we would give to our clientele all in one package. So performing to train like you're in physical therapy, getting in and doing dynamic work like you're a field and court sport athlete, lifting like a power lifter, going in and hitting hypertrophy work like a bodybuilder, and then recovering to the level of a triathlete. So kind of a culmination of all the different types of athletes that I've worked with in the past, taking the best from all disciplines and trying to put them into one system that really is geared towards longevity. Plain and simple, longevity, meaning that you're going to feel good, you're not going to be hurt, and you're going to get the big response, which is getting lean, building muscle, most importantly, staying resilient against otherwise preventable injuries.
Yeah. Interesting. And this is an online system that you've been delivering for people to take part in, and they can buy the program and do it themselves, or they have to come to a course. How does that work?
Yeah, so they can go and actually purchase it. It's a single sale program that's on drjohnrusin.com.
Okay.
And the best thing about FHT is it's a $99 12-week program, but it's a continuing education resource upon everything else. 70,000 words, me being me with the writing, 70,000 words,
fact that you remember that.
over 200 videos, 120
Wow.
pages is what this resource is. And the best value add that we have that we've done since day one is that we put everyone who purchases this program into my private coaching group.
Oh, wow.
And this is where a vast majority of my time during the day goes, answering questions, looking at videos, and knowing very well that 72% of the people that buy FHT are industry professionals. They are personal trainers. They are strength coaches. They're physical therapists, chiropractors, PTAs. There's some way within the industry, which was very, very intriguing for me.
Yeah.
So, that opened up the opportunity. We have a couple cool things coming that everyone's going to be very excited about, more on the professional development side of things. But it's something that we kind of see it in real time with our courses. But we're going to be expanding out the courses. We have a couple exciting projects coming out that are going to be very viral in nature with some strategic partnerships. I know you know about that.
Yeah.
And 2018 is going to be a big year. 2019, I think, is going to really go nuts. And again, everything that we're trying to do now is trying to have the mission to educate from the top down, trickle down effect, where if we can get the coaches and we can get the personal trainers coaching at a higher level, then everything else gets better for their clientele. Yes. And we dig ourselves out of this injury epidemic that we're currently in. We give people better physical autonomy, and we start actually making a change in the way that people train, but more so the way that people can live.
So you don't need to be like super knowledgeable on biomechanics and anatomy, physiology to do this program.
No, the best thing about it is that you are your own first client.
Right.
So we're going to use all these high science methodologies, but guess what? You're going to train them.
Yeah.
So you're going to train them with your own body, and then I have 10 articles on each of these methods that you can go and read about. You can go deep dive on them. And again, it's like picking and choosing the best things that people can test on themselves in a well-rounded program that then again they can apply back into their clientele.
Yeah.
So it's just what I did. I learned and I did simultaneously. That's what I was trying to do with FHT. People could do it, they could do it, and then they could apply it later on with their clients.
And something that I think is so unique and something that's scared me a little bit, and not that I'm at that level of understanding as you are, but I've never really wanted to venture down the online route of programs because it's hard to manage expectations. If you and I are training in person, like sure, I can make adjustments on the fly. Or if my athlete came in today like he did, it was like, man, I'm not feeling too well. Like I'm not. Today was supposed to be our high intensity day,
right?
And then we go, high, low, moderate. And today he was like, man, I was with the kids all weekend. I don't really feel awesome. I kind of ate kind of crappy this weekend. He's like, a little tired. I'm like,
right.
Cool. So we got to change on the fly. But like for I just never was willing to go down that. So how do you manage that as a physical therapist? What some might say a form Nazi, someone who's like very in depth with doing shit well.
So we classify people. If you're in acute pain, you're not doing our program.
Okay.
This is not for you.
Okay.
If you're dealing with huge limitations, this is not for you. You have to have some sort of pain-free training ability.
Gotcha.
If you're dealing with chronic aches and pains, like, my shoulder's kind of cranky here and there, when I bench press, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But if you're a clinical patient, you're not for online training. I don't even look at FHT as online training, but you're not for a single sale program.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd be lying to say I don't have 25 to 40 threads going every single day, all day, every day, where we're coaching people up. Because again, I am a form Nazi.
Right.
I want to go deep dive on every single part of the program. And it's on people to ask the right questions. But once they do, I feel like I'm on my phone all day, every day. And my wife's like, who are you texting? I'm like, I'm not texting. Like, I'm
Jessica.
answering these FHT questions because we need to get this woman squatting 2 plates. Like, this is her goal. So we're doing a lot of that. But again, just going back to the point of trying to over-deliver on stuff. When people get into this group, it's like, this is the best freaking $100 I've ever spent.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to kind of lead a reputation with, because I want to be able to deliver something of value to people that they remember. And guess what? Those are the people that come to the courses. Those are the people that will continue to support. If you can over-deliver something, that's what you want to do. If you're under-delivering on things, you're not going to make it for long term in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So I highly encourage you guys to all jump on that. I think I'm going to jump on that program as well, because it's something I can do. Like, because as much as I love clubs and maces, and like not every gym has them, and like I'm on the road a lot. I'm about to jump on in 2 weeks. I'm about to be on the road for a month straight.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, ooh, I could probably do something, because what I fell into from traveling all the time is I don't necessarily follow a program. I train, I work out, right? I don't train. I'm not training any specific adaptation or goal, but it's something that's missing, right? Because that means I'm like, my intensity is kind of shitty today, or I just don't go do that, or I go do what I'm really good at, right? And I never actually pursue, I don't have that stress adaptation of like pushing through to get good or improve or see a specific result. So I'm really excited to jump down that rabbit hole and start going through. And
you'll crush it, man.
Yeah, maybe get some gains, maybe get my arm game a little bit better through some blood flow restriction, because my biceps could use some help. Yeah, I wear tanks all the time because I'm not ashamed. I'm perfectly capable or self-deprecating and wherever I'm at in my life. So where, as we start to wrap up, and John's got to jump on a flight here in a minute, where can people find you?
Our main hub, drjohnrusin.com, drjohnrusin.com. That has everything on there. That thing is growing by leaps and bounds because of the quality of the content.
Yeah.
We have deep dives in on over 250 long-form articles where we're coaching up in videos, but we also have the reference science if you dig that stuff too. So that has everything over there.
Yeah.
There's many, many articles all over the web. You can dive into those as well. But most of our social media is done on Instagram. It's at Dr. John Rusin. And then also on Facebook, it's just my personal account, John Rusin.
Okay, perfect. So every show that we like to wrap up, we like to end with, what is some advice you have for a brand new coach, clinician, aspiring trainer that you can give them today that they can take and implement and start finding a higher level of success going forward?
Just like training, you got to lay the foundation.
Yeah.
The foundation for a trainer, a strength coach, anyone in the fitness industry is getting the experience, but then more so having quality experiences. So even if you're not getting paid for something, go and volunteer. Get a mindset where you can be eclectic with your approach. And if you can do that for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, all of a sudden you're going to have a value add for whoever's going to hire you or your next business venture. That's the best thing that people skip over. Sometimes it sucks to go down and be in the trenches all day for a couple of years at a time, but every great coach that I know has done it. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just do the path. The path's sometimes hard, but if you do that path, it's going to work out well.
I mean, to your credit, it's like, man, you spent 10 years grinding. I mean, you're, almost 15 years grinding because you got into it at such a young age. And it's like, all of that is a result of why what you're doing today has been so successful, why people spend $500 to $1,000 to come hear you speak, right? Because you put in that work, not because like, oh, I got a DPT or, oh, I played baseball. Like those were all factors, but
experience.
Yeah, right? And ways for it to deliver, over deliver, value.
Exactly.
So real quick, what's who are a couple people that you've really looked up to in your career? People that you follow and have helped shaped who you are.
I would say definitely the functional movement systems. Back when I was broke in San Diego, I spent every dollar that I had on investing in their educations, and they're not cheap.
Yeah.
So I went in and I did that.
FMS for those of you guys, if you guys are wondering where you went with that.
And really, my dad was a big influencer on me too.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from the methodologies that we're running, but more of like the mindset. That dude loved to do what he did every day, and he was an influencer of people, and it wasn't about him. It was about his athletes. It was about his students, and he did that for 34 years in the same position. And
isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
My dad worked
man.
for the same job
It's
for 34 years as
crazy.
well. And it's like,
and then you think about the impact that you have there. That's kind of what I'm trying to do, is have that bigger impact and change the lives of people. And yeah, I couldn't think of a better person that has influenced me than that.
He did a good job playing like marionette, like the puppeteer, right? The things that had the little wood thing, like, yeah, I'm just gonna throw you in this weight room at 15 and kind of see what happens. And then like having, you transferred a bunch of times in a row, and I'm sure there was some great father-son moments of like, is
that's
this
not
wise?
stressful.
Right, at all, right? That's huge.
Yeah.
And then like driving you to San Diego from Buffalo across the country. I mean, if you guys have never taken like a cross-country road trip, like, and you do it with someone, you find out how close you are, because that's a whole lot of time in a condensed area.
Yep.
Like, and that's an unbelievable trip that you probably get to share in your heart for forever.
For sure.
And then for him to like you said, you came from a family that found success, and you're like, yep, my dad just let me live in this days in, even though like you probably could have like, hey, I could, help me out, find some rent. And like, nope. You're going to live in this shoddy hotel on the freeway because it shaped you who you are. Like, how much more do you appreciate the house that you guys just built in Madison right now? Like, ooh, the other option is I live in a fucking Days Inn, right? And now you guys have this brand new, beautiful gym in your basement where you can shoot content. You're not trying to run off to a ex-public gym to go shoot where people are like, why is this guy shooting videos? Who are you?
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's really awesome. And I love the journey. And what's great when I ask that question of the advice is like, it's a lot of it's always the same from every person. Like volunteer's been like the common one, right? Shut up, volunteer, learn as much as you can, ask good questions when given the opportunity. So thank you guys very much for joining us here on the Fitness Break Room. Thank you, Dr. John, for coming in and coming in for the weekend. And if you guys have any questions, hit him up. We'll have everything in the show notes, from how to get on to FHT to how to get in touch with him. And we thank you guys very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks again for listening to the Fitness Break Room podcast, everybody. You can follow us on Instagram at Fitness Break Room. And if you're looking to enter our monthly fitness swag giveaway, you can visit our website, fitnessbreakroom.com, and all that info's on the homepage. Hundreds of dollars worth of awesome stuff, so I wouldn't miss that. And then you can even subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and leave us a review if you're digging what we're bringing you. That would be awesome and very helpful. Okay, guys, have a beautiful week. Stay strong, and always look out for the little guy.
I know you